Okay, here we are. TEAL Shirt Report Podcast. Hey, great to be here. Got another broadcast coming at you, the TEAL Shirt Report Podcast. This one is episode show number 45, number D, 45D. Still saluting Carlos Alvarez, wide receiver of the Florida Gators back in the late 60s and early 1970s. You know, back in the day was the Super Softs when they started, I think in the 69 season. John Reeves, number 7, Tommy Durrance, number 33, and yes, Carlos Alvarez, number 45. The guy lives in Tallahassee now. Became a lawyer and graduated from the University of Florida. And what a great receiver he was. He ended up, the rough thing about Carlos, man, he gave it all he had on the field. And I try to be as accurate as possible. I know he injured a knee, maybe both knees at Florida. He still got drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm not sure what round it was. We can go back and check that. But Carlos was, he was injured going into the NFL, but he still got drafted. And we're going to talk Florida Gator football. Jacksonville Jaguars here on the Teal Shirt Report podcast. Training camp is underway. I believe the rookies have already reported, and in the next day or two, the Jacksonville Jaguars veterans reporting. Training camp is actually going to be open for the general public, and then there's other, I think, practices for the season ticket holders. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think practice opens for the general public July 24th, and then there's July 25th, and many, many other dates after that. We appreciate you tuning into the Teal Shirt Report podcast. I want to thank all the folks that help us. And if you check the ticker at the bottom, you're seeing about JC's show from the pub live on Thursday nights. Don't forget to check out the Mad Max Mix every Wednesday evening. And I know JC and myself listen to him every Wednesday. Check out the Mad Max Mix every Wednesday evening from 6 o'clock p.m. till 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time and 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. MadMaxMix.weebly.com. Mad Max playing his mix and request too at MadMaxMix.weebly.com. So you guys, thank you for tuning in to our show. It's mainly about the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Florida Gators, the SEC, and all those teams in the SEC, and whether they're Vanderbilt pulling up the bottom of the barrel or the top 4 teams that we anticipate right now. Georgia, kind of predicted by most publications, is number 1. Texas is number 2. Maybe Ole Miss is high as 3rd, and Alabama maybe as low as 4th. You could flip-flop Ole Miss and Bama, perhaps. Jacksonville Jaguars, man, they're going to have a much better defense in 2024. The emergence of Trayvon Walker with 10 sacks in his second year. I think Trayvon Walker, man, if he can become a dominating player in year 3 and then in year 4, you got something with him on defense. Devin Lloyd, the linebacker, coming on. The massive contracts on defense. Josh Allen. What's his name now? Josh Hines Allen, right? Kind of changed his name a little bit. Dad, another family name. Let me make sure I get that name right. And then it's kind of like with Josh Allen. Now maybe if he goes as Josh Hines Allen, he's not. Let's see, the name change is Josh Hines Allen, right? And I haven't really researched this that much. There's all these different things we can talk Shirt Report podcast. Josh Hines Allen, I know Mr. Allen signed a deal where he's getting $88 million guaranteed. Let's see, the name change. The Jaguars' most expensive and best defensive players changed his name. This is according to the Jags website. The Jaguars' Pro Bowl edge defender now is named Josh Hines Allen and will wear Hines Allen on the back of his number 41 jersey beginning with the 2024 NFL season. And Josh Hines Allen now has announced the change as of just a few days ago. Allen made the change as a tribute to Joshua's maternal side of the family and the other relatives who have worn Hines and Hines Allen on their jerseys. And Allen went on to say and said, "Legacy is forever, and I'm proud to carry that tradition on the back of my jersey, following in the footsteps of my family." So there's a name change. Josh Hines Allen wearing number 41. So he shouldn't really be confused with a quarterback from Buffalo whose name is just Josh Allen. Josh Hines Allen will have both of those last names on his jersey, Hines Allen. So I thought that was kind of an interesting change. We talk about Tyson Campbell. Tyson Campbell's a guy that plays cornerback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. There were so many people that were saying, "Man, you got to draft a cornerback in the first round." I'm not so sure you did. You just needed to get this guy back on the field and be healthy as the Jags' number one cornerback. They did draft Florida State cornerback in the third round who never gave up a touchdown at over 400 snaps with the FSU Seminoles in 2023. That's what I was told. I didn't do the research on all the snaps, but that's the impact that he had for Florida State. Now he's in the NFL. This could be a surprise player out of the third round, being the fact that the Jaguars did not draft a cornerback in round 1 or round 2, but I'm happy with what they did. They needed help on the defensive line. They needed a number 1 overall wide receiver and enter the LSU guy, right? And man, he's going to have some immense pressure on him. But when I will pull I need to go ahead and do that while we're doing the podcast now. Episode show number 45D. I think 45C was kind of our promo that we did. And give me a moment. We're going to basically check on everything. Also, college football, we're going to talk about that as well. Some SEC football notes, by the way. SEC football notes that I kind of typed up earlier today. SEC football notes: Georgia top dog, Texas may be second, as the Longhorns have that great quarterback depth. Arch Manning on the roster, but not even starting. I get kind of enamored, and I have a lot of respect for the quarterbacks that'll go to a team and they will literally stay with a team in college for 2 or 3 years. And I think it's an outstanding thing. I'm going to pull up the Jaguars depth chart as well. And we're going to take a look at, some different things as far as the wide receivers go. There's a whole lot keeping up, all the names and things like that. There were guys that I hope the Jaguars would draft that they have never drafted. But I was all in favor, and I was all in on drafting a wide receiver in the first round. The Jaguars did slide back in the draft. I think they selected the same guy that they would have selected 5 picks earlier. When they traded back, then they're selecting 23rd, and they did select Brian Thomas, wide receiver out of LSU from the Southeastern Conference. They got Mason Smith, also out of LSU, defensive tackle in the second round, 48. But when they made the trade to trade back and get some additional picks in the draft, and particularly in future drafts as well, I think they picked the same guy. I think Brian Thomas was going to be the pick a little bit earlier, 5 picks earlier for the Jaguars as well. And then they decided to trade back, get some additional picks, and they were able to get Brian Thomas, wide receiver, out of LSU. Taking a look at SEC football notes again. Georgia top dog. Texas may be second, as the Longhorns do have a great quarterback room. Great quarterback depth, I should say. Same thing, quarterback room as well. Arch Manning, not the starter, but there's a guy even better than Arch Manning that is playing ahead of him right now. Arch Manning will get his opportunity. Should I pull up anything on Arch Manning? Arch Manning, does he stay in Texas? I'm assuming he will. Arch Manning, for Texas, 2 quarterbacks are better than 1. It's like JC and I, my executive producer, 2 heads are better than 1. For Texas, 2 quarterbacks are better than 1, right? Even Texas redshirt freshman Arch Manning has had to admit, to the rarity or oddity of the situation, playing behind the junior, and everybody following how Texas does. Basically, the preseason pundits and preseason prognostications, quote unquote, if you will, has Archie Manning behind Quinn Ewers, if I'm pronouncing Quinn Ewers' name, if I'm pronouncing Quinn Ewers' name right. He's a starter. Heck, he was a starter last year. He's a junior. Arch Manning going to wait his time at Texas, and bear in mind, Texas is basically a SEC team now. Oklahoma is too. Don't forget about Oklahoma. They're might be middle of the pack, but when you're in the middle of the pack of the SEC, you still got a heck of a program. You really do. What I wrote earlier today about the SEC, again, SEC, my SEC football notes today on July the 20th. SEC football notes: Georgia top dog, Carson Beck, our Jacksonville guy who had originally verbally committed to Alabama a couple of 3 years back. I guess it was about 3 years ago, right? And then he kind of rescinded that, and then he was looking around at different schools. I think Florida, he even did take a look at Florida briefly, but he decided to ultimately go to Georgia. And according to Mad Max, our Georgia Bulldog football insider, according to Mad Max, Carson Beck is looking better and better. Mad Max did watch the G-Day game in the spring. Said Carson Beck is getting better and better. The kid out of Jacksonville, Florida, that won a state championship in his junior year at Mandarin. He's got some 4 stars and 5 stars right in front of him across the offensive line, and that's going to help Carson Beck quite a bit. Georgia, the top dog. Texas may be second, as the Longhorns have that great quarterback depth, Ewers and Arch Manning. Ole Miss may be third, perhaps. You might be the flip-flop Ole Miss and Bama. So Georgia, the top dog. Texas may be second, as the Longhorns have that great quarterback depth. Ole Miss, with maybe one of Coach Lane Kiffin's best teams, may be in the third spot. Bama, with a new coach, number 4 in the SEC. Is that too low? You could probably flip-flop Alabama and Ole Miss, maybe. Could Auburn and Florida be dark horses? Florida synopsis: 17 starters returning, and that is according to the SEC Media Days speech when it was Florida's turn, and Coach Billy Napier got up there to speak, and he did make that announcement. As far as Florida is concerned, 17 starters returning could make the Gators a dark horse in 2024. Although the magazines are picking Florida, Lindy's and Athlon, they've got Florida like 11th or 12th. Phil Steele's publication was kinder to Coach Billy Napier and the Gators. I think Phil Steele, there might have been a quote in there saying Florida can or may or will have a winning season. Now, that's got a lot to depend on winning close games, is the way I feel. Florida synopsis: 17 starters returning could make the Gators a dark horse in 2024. The schedule is brutal, though, especially the last 5 games in the regular season. 7 wins for UF would be considered a mild success with this schedule for Florida. Florida has a top half of the league quarterback room, but need to find a wide receiver that exceeds expectations. In other words, they got to find a wide receiver out there among the ones they have that, man, this guy, he's turning it up a notch during the season, and he might be more talented and may develop into something more than people originally thought. So we'll see who becomes the top wide receiver at Florida as the 2024 season unfolds. Florida's got to get ready quick. They play Miami, the U. Florida will play Miami, the U on August 31st. It's on ABC. I believe the kickoff's around 3:30, last time I checked. The networks have a way of changing game times, but I don't think they'll change that ABC 3:30 kick. It is July the 20th now. So, again, Florida's got a couple of pretty good quarterbacks in the quarterback room. Incoming five-star DJ Lagway. Florida's quarterback room, they got another kid, the kid that returned. Everybody thought he was gone after last year. He decided to come back for another year. So you got really two good quarterbacks. There's actually a third guy that Florida recruited too. And so the quarterback room seems pretty good, pretty solid at Florida right now. I would say that the Florida Gator quarterbacks are not in the top 3 or 4, but I would say they're probably in the top half of the league. Maybe anywhere from, when you say top half of the league, you have 16 teams, so probably anywhere from 6 to 8 as far as the Florida quarterbacks combined. When you're talking about both the top 2 quarterbacks, you're talking about Graham Mertz, of course, who's coming back. He started, he's in 2023. He started the first 11 games, and you got Mertz, you got Lagway. Lagway looks pretty good. Lagway made a prediction too. Lagway is saying, and I think it's really good because he's excited to be a Florida Gator quarterback and on the Florida Gator roster. He's going to be the backup behind Graham Mertz. But Lagway is, I saw one report that Lagway was saying he predicted a winning season. I think that's a pretty good prediction if Florida can win the close games. They got more talent. They got some players coming back. Graham Mertz excited, to lead the Florida Gators into the 2024 season as a starter. I think Lagway will play some in different situations. And basically, I think Lagway, if everything goes well, everybody stays healthy, Lagway will play some. I don't want to say it's a Tebow type situation when Tebow was a freshman, but maybe Lagway plays about a similar amount of time that Tebow did as a freshman. That was Chris Lake and Tebow combining as quarterbacks that year. That was a national championship team. Now, this is a little bit of a different situation. The SEC goes to what? 16 teams now. And you got Graham Mertz, a starter. He had a good season last year. He played a lot of college football. Played in Wisconsin, transferred to Florida. This will be his second year at Florida. DJ Lagway comes in as a 5-star recruit. This is a guy that, in Lagway, this is a player that Billy Napier's been talking about ever since he's been at Florida, right? And now he's moving into year 3. So when we take a look at our notes, and our notes should also include Missouri, because Missouri's a program that I kept thinking was going to lose games, and then, man, they shocked me. They won games. They've got an offensive tackle that now is in the NFL with our Jacksonville Jaguars, that he could be one of the steals of the draft. But now he's no longer a Missouri Tiger. So Missouri's got to replace some people on their team. They got a good coach. It's Drinkwitz, I believe his name is. He's done a good job. They won more games than I thought they would last year. I think Missouri was, 9-3 last year in the regular season. So when we take a look at our SEC football notes, again, reviewing Georgia, the top dog. Texas may be second in the SEC as the Longhorns have that great quarterback depth with Arch Manning. Ewers a starter. Ole Miss may be one of Coach Lane Kiffin's best teams since he's been there. Bama with a new coach, number 4. Is that too low? You could probably flip-flop Alabama and Ole Miss, maybe, perhaps. Could Auburn and Florida beat dark horses? Florida synopsis, 17 starters returning, according to Coach Billy Napier. when he spoke to media days, when he spoke at NBC Media Days very, very recently, just a few days ago. But the schedule is brutal. 17 starters for Florida returning could make the Gators a dark horse in 2024. That number 17, the 17 starters, again, was mentioned by Coach Billy Napier during the SEC Media Days when Coach Billy Napier, the UF Florida Gator head coach, addressed the media. And he was introduced, obviously, as now being the third-year coach at Florida, moving into his third year, critical year for Coach Billy Napier. He needs a winning season very, very badly in order to continue his program, in order to continue to stay, because the fan base, not so much me, and I'm kind of part of the media and the fan base, but the fan base in another losing season, they're going to want a head on a platter, right? Figuratively speaking. So here's the thing with Florida. The Florida schedule is doable the first 7 games. You got to take them one at a time. Playing the U of Miami, the University of Miami, the Florida Hurricanes on August 31st. You got to feel like that's a must-win for Napier, whether it's a close game or not. Napier needs to win that one. Then he's got Samford. I'm going to listen to the Samford game on the radio. The first 3 games, I looked at the TV schedule, and it looks really nice for TV. And not having to watch the 4-letter guys, even though I guess ESPN and ABC are basically the same company, right? But the first game against Miami is on ABC kickoff at 3:30 August 31st. Second game is going to be Samford. I think I'm going to just, as a tribute to my dad, I'm going to listen to that game on the radio. Then the third game coming up on the schedule is Texas A&M, and that is another ABC kickoff in the third game. So those are the first 3 games for Florida. But look, going back to the SEC notes, because I want Georgia fans to feel like they can come listen to us, because they're Jaguars fans too. Florida fans, I've been a Gator fan since the early 1970s. Our executive producer is an Alabama fan, has been most all his life, and he's covered the SEC Western Division for us, but there's no divisions now. There's absolutely no divisions in the SEC, and that's basically because the folks that run college football, they want these conference championship games. They're going to want absolutely. Somebody called me Max Headroom the other day because I'm moving my head around so much during the podcast. So I appreciate you guys too hit the subscribe button. Please hit the subscribe button. We are absolutely brand new on video. We've been on, I worked terrestrial radio for 25 years, and now we've been doing a podcast on audio only for like 5 years, and now we're moving it up. We're on YouTube too. We're on YouTube as well now. So check us out, the Teal Shirt Report podcast. You can find us on YouTube. Obviously, if you're watching this, you've already found us, and just hit the subscribe button once you find us. If you type bigjreport.com on browser, you're going to find our website. You go to YouTube, you type bigjreport.com, you're going to find us in there as well. So you guys, man, thank you so much for listening in. Back to my notes from the SEC. We know Vanderbilt's going to be rock bottom. Probably Arkansas. Arkansas may be able to finish a little higher than Mississippi State. Boy, I miss Coach Mike Leach, the guy that sadly passed away. I loved his press conferences. You could actually tell the last year of his press conferences, and he was coughing a lot. He was probably not in the best of health, and sadly he passed away after winning the Egg Bowl over Lane Kiffin back, about a year and a half ago. This will be the second season, moving into the second season without Mike Leach as their head coach with Mississippi State. So back to the SEC notes. Talking about the Florida synopsis, 17 starters returning, according to Coach Billy Napier, could make the Gators a dark horse in 2024, although they're picked by Lindy's and Athlon to be respectively like 11th or 12th in the league. Although Bill still, his publication liked the Gators more, thinking, hey, Florida can or may have a winning season. you read the bottom of Phil Steele's publication, it gives you confidence when they say at the bottom, the most accurate for the last 26 years. That makes you feel good if you're a Gator fan, because it looks like Phil Steele likes the Gators more than the other publications did. Athlon and Lindy's, they got Florida finishing in the SEC around 11th or 12th, kind of Kentucky each side of them. I think both publications may like Auburn a little bit better. And, you know, it is true. I really think Auburn will do better in the second year of Hugh Freeze, you know, now that he's been the head coach at Auburn, moving into his second year now. So, again, could Auburn and Florida even be dark horses? Florida synopsis, 17 starters returning, could make the Gators a dark horse in 2024. The schedule is brutal, though, especially the last 5 games in the regular season. That includes the likes of Georgia, LSU, Texas. I've got the Texas Longhorns are in the SEC now. So the last 5 games for Florida, in what most publications are calling and saying Florida has the toughest schedule in the nation. Florida will have Georgia in the last 5, LSU, Texas, Florida State. Who else is on that darn schedule? I don't have it right in front of me, but Florida has Georgia, LSU, Texas. I might as well just pull the schedule up, because I always forget one of those. Here it is. I got the schedule somewhere along the lines here. Let's pull it up. Let's absolutely pull up the Florida schedule, or the last 5 games at least. I think the first 7 games may be doable. We told you about Miami, Samford, and Texas A&M. Florida's got UCF in there a little later too. But the last 5 games, Georgia, LSU, my gosh, Georgia, LSU, Texas, Florida State. My goodness, tough games coming up on the schedule. Let me go ahead and pull up that Florida schedule. I was doing really, really good remembering from memory those last 5 games Florida had on the schedule. 2024 Florida football schedule. Everybody pulls things up now, don't they? The schedule for Florida. Again, the first game, watch on ABC, August 31st. Kickoff already set, 3:30 p.m. for Florida Field, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. Spurrier's got his name somewhere on the field, too, quite deservingly. Coach Steve Spurrier, some people forget, he won 5 SEC titles at Florida in the 1990s. Regular season schedule for Florida. They say it's the toughest schedule in the country. Somebody had to be, I guess, designated as the team with the toughest schedule, because there's other SEC teams. Their schedule is just about as tough as Florida's, depending on how these other teams shake out. Okay, here's the 5, the brutal 5 I was telling you about. Florida plays Georgia here in Jacksonville on November 2nd. Texas, at Texas. How about that? At Texas, November the 9th. That'd be in Austin, Texas, right? Florida's got LSU at home on November 16th. Ole Miss is the one I was forgetting about. That is a home game for Florida, but that's going to be tough. Lane Kiffin's got one of his best teams, and they're projected to be in the top 4 in the SEC, top 5 or 6 in the country. So that brutal 5 stretch has Florida playing Georgia on November 2nd, Texas on November the 9th at Texas. November the 16th, Florida host LSU. November 23rd, Florida will host Ole Miss. And then a game in Tallahassee on November the 30th. The final regular season game for Florida will be, apparently this one's at Tallahassee against Florida State on November the 30th. So for you Florida Gator fans, and I had gone up in one of the Florida groups and said, hey, we're now doing video with our podcast. And we do talk about the Florida Gators, Jacksonville Jaguars primarily, North Florida Entertainment, the SEC. We've got a Georgia Bulldog football insider, Mad Max, who told us recently that Carson Beck was looking better and better. He watched the spring game, the which is known as a G-Day spring game for Georgia. So we understand everybody loves their team. The Georgia fans, the Florida fans. I just happen to grow up a Florida fan. Alex Nunnery is a Florida Gator fan. JC, executive producer, been an Alabama fan most all of his life. And, you know, John Gaylor, man, he's a great college football fan. He helps us a lot on our podcast as well. But those brutal games, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State, my goodness. The first 7 games are kind of doable. When you kind of track this and you say, well, Florida could go 7-5, that means they got to win close games in a tough schedule. I think Florida can beat Miami. I think they can beat Samford. Texas A&M. Texas A&M's another program that's projected to be in the middle, but maybe moving up. Jimbo's gone. He's no longer doing the limbo at Texas A&M. And that's a game that could go either way. That's going to be a 3:30 ABC game on September the 14th. I like the ABC games. I'm going to just watch them on regular ABC TV. I'm going to listen to the Samford game on the radio. You take a look at the darn schedule. I like Florida beating Miami at home. I think they will. I remember when Coach Dan Mullen was at Florida, he beat Miami one year by 4 points, I believe it was, like 24-20. Now it's Billy Napier's turn to play Miami in his 3rd season as the head coach at Florida. The Miami game. If there was ever a must-win to start the season, this one is for Coach Billy Napier. I think Samford is a win. We better hope it's a win, right? And that better be a blowout. I know that Samford, Florida State, and Coach Willie Taggart a few years ago, boy, he monkeyed around with Samford and almost lost that game, right? Texas A&M, Mississippi State, UCF. Florida could go through that 5-game stretch at 4-1, 3-2. My goodness, could they run the table and win 5 of their first 5? Then they got Tennessee. Tennessee's been getting a couple of new wide receivers out of the portal. Tennessee's going to be tough under Josh Heupel again. UK is always a tough out here recently for Florida. Let's see, Florida's got the Kentucky Wildcats and Coach Mark Stoops actually at home this year. The game against Tennessee is at Tennessee. When I first looked at this schedule, I looked at it optimistically, and I said, I think Florida can go 5-2 after the first 7 games. The last 5, the brutal 5 at the end, maybe 2-3. That gives you 7 wins, 7-5. If Billy Napier goes 7-5, you would have to consider it a pretty successful season and a winning record and a decent bowl game, right? 7-5. They go to bowls at 6-6 now, of course, but 7-5, I think that would calm the fan base a little bit down with Billy Napier. Even the bowl loss, and they go 7-6, I think the season would be considered a decent success at Florida. With the fans are going to want more in Billy's 4th year if he goes 7-5 or 7-6. I think if Billy Napier goes 7-5, that is a fairly decent success. If Billy Napier somehow could win 8 games in his 3rd year, I think he's got a shot at being the SEC Coach of the Year. We kind of went over the schedule a little bit there. Didn't really intend to do that, but we pulled it up and kind of did take a look at the schedule. Florida's got to beat Kentucky. You got to beat Kentucky. And I think Florida will beat Kentucky this year. I really do. It could be close. Probably will be, but I think Florida gets Kentucky this year. Tennessee, I don't know. Like I said, I think the first 7 games are doable. I think Florida probably is looking at 5-2 after 7 games. I think Napier better be at least 5-2 after 7 games, and then better win 2 out of that brutal 5. Who's he going to beat? Is he going to beat Ole Miss? Can Florida compete against Georgia? Have a shot at winning the game in the 4th quarter? We'll see what happens. Back to the SEC football notes. Again, Florida does have a top half of the league quarterback room with Mertz and Lagway, but need to find a wide receiver that exceeds expectations. For the Gator defense, it's a must to improve to finish off a winning season in 2024. Again, the Gator defense is a must to improve to really finish a winning season as well. And Coach Billy Napier, part of his job is getting the team up, putting the game plan in, and I think Billy's still calling the plays, right? On offense. I think Florida still needs probably a new OC, but we'll see what happens in 2024, right? And Coach Napier, man, if he's on the hot seat, he wants to be calling the plays. I can understand that theory. But again, the Gator defense is a must to improve the UF fortunes to finish with a winning season. And again, Coach Napier, as a head coach, needs to find a way to win the close games. He does. Scott at BigJReport.com. Check us out on our website. We're going to wrap up this episode, show number 45D. Still saluting Carlos Alvarez, who wore number 45 for the University of Florida Gators, part of the Super Softs of John Reeves, Tommy Durrance, and Carlos Alvarez. And Carlos is the last of the three still living. He's been a lawyer in Tallahassee for a number of years. Carlos may be retired now, but I'm not sure about that. But man, he's been around for a long time now. Big Gator fan. He's gone back to a lot of games in Gainesville. Been with his old teammates, the ones that are still living, and of course remembering the guys that have passed on from those teams in the late 60s and early 1970s. My first hero in sports was probably John Reeves, who wore number 7 with the Florida Gators, and John passed away a handful of years ago. On the next podcast, we're going to go and wrap things up now. We're going to try to make things a little bit shorter, but we do have concerts to check out. We'll do that on the next podcast. This has been episode show number 45D. Special thanks to our executive producer, JC, our producer, Alex Nunry. The Armada got knocked out of the playoffs, but they went 2-1 in the playoffs. They had a pretty good season, 8-3-2 in the NPSL Soccer League. Jumbo Shrimp at the All-Star break. In their first game since back from the All-Star break, they got washed out on Friday night. I believe their game was rained out Friday night. We'll make some notes, so when we come back with the next episode, we'll give you an update on the Jumbo Shrimp, the North Florida concerts for North Florida and surrounding areas. There's some good shows. There's some good shows coming up. Night Ranger. We'll be talking about Night Ranger and their show coming up here in a few weeks. So we'll get to that. Right now, just going to kind of wrap it up. Please hit the subscribe button for us. Anything you want to comment on. How many wins do you think the Florida Gators can get in 2024? I'm going to say 7. I'm going to keep my prediction at about 7. If they win more than 7, Coach Billy Napier could be SEC Coach of the Year, perhaps. There's going to be a surprise team. There's always a surprise team. Missouri was that team last year. We'll be back. More content coming up on the Teal Shirt Report podcast. I'm Scott with BigJReport.com. You guys have a great day. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Special thanks to our executive producer, JC, our other producer, Alex Nunry, and our correspondent and contributor, John Gaylor. Thank you guys for all the help you do. And we're constantly trying to grab content, questions I'd like to ask you guys. How many wins will Florida get? How many wins will the Jaguars get in 2024? I haven't really even thought about how many games the Jaguars could win. Everybody else seems to be improving in the AFC South now. Everybody's got a new quarterback. When you really look at it, as far as the starting quarterbacks go, take a look at all the teams in the AFC South, and Trevor Lawrence, I believe, has been the longest standing quarterback. And Trevor is just going into his 4th year. He's got a new contract that's going to kick in now after his fourth and fifth year seasons. He's going to be the Jaguar quarterback for the next 7 years, and he's already, been with the Jaguars for 3 years. Tennessee has a quarterback. I believe he got hurt toward the end. Will Levis, the guy that puts mayonnaise in his coffee as a creamer, I guess. Crazy. I love coffee, but I'm not going to mess with mayonnaise in the coffee like Will Levis does. I don't even know where that comes from. Why he would do that? Why would he do that? Is that something we need to try at home? Maybe not. I don't know. This picture, it's got a little oozing to it. I think mayonnaise is more of a product for food, like a ham sandwich or something like that. You got the former Gator quarterback, even though he was, not Anthony Richardson was not the Gator quarterback that long. He's in the NFL now, but he's basically the Colts quarterback as long as he can stay healthy. The Titans got Will Levis, and let's see the other team in the division. Let's see, and of course, we're going to tell you the Jacksonville Jaguars need to win the AFC South division. And that's the first goal before there's any talk of playoffs, or how far you can go in the playoffs. You need to win your division. In the AFC South, we know Anthony Richardson is a quarterback with the Colts, Will Levis with the Titans, and the guy that's probably better than those two players is C.J. Stroud, moving into his second year. C.J. Stroud with the Houston Texans, as we wind up this podcast, to me, he looks smooth, and he got rid of the ball he always got rid of the ball very, very quickly. We'll see how he does in year two, because, obviously the defensive coordinator is going to try to make adjustments on what C.J. Stroud does, the quarterback with the Houston Texans. Thanks for listening to our podcast, we'll call this one episode show number 45, 45D. Episode show number 45D. Thank you guys for listening. I'm your host of this thing we call the TEAL Shirt Report podcast. I'm Scott with BigJReport.com. You guys have a great day. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening. Take care. Thank you.